Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted most? Those words echoed in my mind the moment my sister looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not family anymore." My heart froze, a mixture of disbelief and hurt swirling inside me. How could someone who shared my childhood, my secrets, my laughter, betray me with such cruel ease? The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with tension. My parents glanced at each other, unsure, their faces a portrait of hesitation. They didn't intervene, not yet. I could feel their unspoken words caught somewhere between fear of confrontation and the desire to let us figure it out ourselves. But my sister, she didn't stop. She thrived on this, her words deliberate, rehearsed, as if she had been planning this moment for years. It all started months ago, in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. First, it was a passing remark about my career, casual yet scornful, as if the very air I breathed was a threat to her superiority. Then came the snide comments at family gatherings, carefully placed to make me feel small, isolated, invisible. I had ignored them at first, telling myself I was overreacting, that perhaps she was just having a rough day. But over time, the mockery evolved into something darker, something that cut straight to my soul. That evening, the night she delivered the final blow, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, replaying the argument in my mind. Her words echoed like a cruel refrain, "You're not family anymore." The phrase was simple, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime of resentment, jealousy, and something I couldn't quite name. I felt my blood run cold, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and something else, an unfamiliar resolve that began to creep into my thoughts. For hours, I replayed the confrontation in my head, dissecting every word, every glance, every gesture. How had it come to this? We had shared everything. Secrets, dreams, late-night whispers about boys, plans about college, even our fear of the dark, but it seemed that history meant nothing now. She had decided, unilaterally, to erase our bond. And that decision ignited a fire inside me, one that demanded I respond. Not with anger, not with tears, but with action. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't known in months. I needed to reclaim myself, to assert that her words did not define me. But I also knew that retaliation through petty arguments or sarcastic remarks would not suffice. No, what she and the rest of the family would not expect would be something far more deliberate, calculated, and, above all, transformative. I began to make plans. Quiet, meticulous plans. Plans that would not only confront the betrayal but also force everyone to see me in a way they had never seen before. I started with subtle changes in my life. I threw myself into work with a focus that surprised even me, taking on projects that challenged my skills and expanded my influence. Friends began to notice the shift in me, their admiration quiet but unmistakable. My confidence grew not from proving my sister wrong, but from proving to myself that I was capable of more than anyone had imagined. Every small victory was a brick in the foundation of what I was building, my rebirth. And yet, as I worked to reshape my own world, my sister seemed oblivious. She continued to flaunt her sense of superiority, mocking others with the same cold precision. But in the corners of my mind, I knew that the moment of reckoning was approaching. The plans I had laid out, each one carefully timed and executed, would converge in a way that no one could anticipate. Not my sister, not my parents, not even the friends who had grown close to her over the years. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, reviewing my strategy for what felt like the 100th time. A notebook full of ideas, a calendar marked with dates and actions, and a single unshakable resolve. I realized that what I was about to do was bigger than revenge. It was a reclamation of identity, a statement that my worth was not contingent on her approval. I thought of her mocking smile, her dismissive tone, and I smiled quietly to myself, a strange mix of satisfaction and anticipation building inside me. Then came the idea that would change everything, a bold, audacious move that would force the entire family to confront the reality of who I had become. It was risky, perhaps even reckless, but it was exactly the kind of unpredictability that would ensure no one saw it coming. I would not attack her directly, nor would I beg for acknowledgement. Instead, I would orchestrate a situation so unexpected that it would leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about me, and perhaps questioning their own biases and assumptions. I can still remember the chill in the air that night as I finalized my plan. Every detail accounted for, every potential obstacle anticipated. The excitement mingled with fear, a cocktail of emotions that made my heart pound with a rhythm I had not felt in years. This was my moment, not just to respond to her cruelty, but to demonstrate the power of resilience, creativity, and unyielding self-respect. And so, the stage was set. The pieces were in place, the players unaware of the game that was about to unfold. I leaned back in my chair, a sense of calm washing over me, knowing that the next few days would redefine everything. My sister's words, meant to wound me, had instead ignited a transformation. And though she believed she had succeeded in pushing me away, she had unwittingly unleashed something far greater than herself, a version of me that could no longer be ignored, dismissed, or mocked. Before I move forward with what happened next, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. You won't believe the twist that comes next. What I did shocked everyone in ways they never imagined. The next morning, I stepped out of my apartment with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Each step felt deliberate, each breath a declaration of my intent. I was no longer the person my sister tried to diminish. But as I walked through the bustling streets, a part of me couldn't help but reflect on how quickly life could twist, how one cruel remark could spark something so transformative. My plan wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about creating a ripple, something that would unsettle the family's perception of me without me ever having to confront her directly. I had realized early on that confrontation only fed her ego. Instead, I needed subtle power, influence that built invisibly, yet unmistakably. It began with small gestures, emails sent to colleagues showcasing my skills, a social media post highlighting my achievements, an unexpected collaboration that drew attention I hadn't anticipated. People began noticing me in ways they hadn't before. The friends who had once laughed at her jokes about me started asking questions, curious about my sudden rise, my quiet confidence. I could see the seeds of admiration and surprise planting themselves, and it gave me a thrill unlike any revenge could. Yet, even with this surge of recognition, a part of me remained cautious. I knew my sister was watching, always watching. She was sharp, manipulative, and skilled at twisting situations to her advantage. I had to anticipate her moves, predict her reactions. I spent nights thinking through scenarios, planning responses that would never escalate into petty arguments but would always maintain my upper hand. Then came the opportunity one had been waiting for, a family gathering that she believed would be her stage. The event was casual, a celebration of our cousin's promotion, but I saw it as the perfect arena for what I had in mind. For weeks, I had orchestrated connections, subtly planting ideas with relatives, friends, even colleagues, ensuring that I would enter this event not as the overlooked sibling, but as the center of intrigue. On the day of the gathering, I dressed carefully, not to impress, but to radiate confidence and calm authority. As I entered the house, I could feel the shift in energy. Conversations paused briefly, eyes turned. And then I saw her, my sister, standing in the middle of the room, the same smirk on her face, completely unaware of the storm about to unfold. I greeted everyone warmly, my presence commanding attention without seeming forceful. The subtle whispers began immediately. "Did you hear about her new project? I saw her interview. It was amazing." The murmurs grew into conversations, and soon everyone in the room was talking about me, not her. I could see the surprise flicker across her face, a momentary crack in her composed facade. I didn't need to speak to her directly. I didn't need to confront her with anger or resentment. The reactions of others were enough. I watched as she tried to interject, to regain control, but each attempt only highlighted her desperation. The more she tried to assert dominance, the more the family and friends gravitated towards me, seeking my opinions, my stories, my insights. In that moment, I realized something crucial. Power didn't come from shouting, from aggression, or from retaliation. True power came from transformation, from becoming someone undeniable, someone respected, someone who no longer depended on her validation, or anyone else's, for self-worth. And as I stood there, surrounded by admiration and quiet awe, I knew that the tides had shifted irrevocably. But life has a way of testing even the most meticulous plans. Just as I began to enjoy the subtle victories, my sister disappeared into the kitchen, whispering urgently to my parents. I couldn't hear their words, but the tension in the air was palpable. Something was happening behind the scenes, something that could disrupt the careful balance I had created. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, I felt the stakes rising. My sister wasn't going to surrender gracefully, and she had a weapon I hadn't fully accounted for: information, secrets, and alliances formed in the shadows. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Could my plan withstand her cunning, her manipulations, her relentless drive to undermine me? I shook my head, dismissing the fear. I had anticipated this, calculated for it, and prepared every move to counteract it. What she didn't know, what no one expected, was that I had already set in motion a series of events that would leave her scrambling, questioning her own strategies, and ultimately, redefining the family dynamic entirely. The rest of the evening unfolded like a delicate game of chess. I made calculated appearances, shared stories that revealed my growth without arrogance, and responded to casual questions with measured, insightful answers. My sister's attempts to regain attention became increasingly obvious, almost pitiful in their desperation. Every glance she threw my way, every thinly veiled remark, only reinforced my resolve. And then it happened, the moment that would tilt the scales completely. My parents, long silent in this silent battle between siblings, finally acknowledged something remarkable about me. Their words, simple yet profound, carried a weight that shifted the atmosphere entirely. The recognition wasn't just about achievements or accolades, it was about transformation, about resilience, about seeing me as I had become, not as I was once dismissed. Her face went pale, the smirk replaced by confusion and perhaps a flicker of fear. She hadn't expected this. None of them had. And in that instant, I realized the full power of patience, planning, and self-belief. Revenge had nothing to do with it. This was about asserting identity, reclaiming dignity, and showing the world that betrayal could ignite something extraordinary rather than destroy. And yet, the story was far from over. My sister, wounded and humiliated in ways she hadn't anticipated, was about to make a move that could change everything again. The next twist, the next revelation, would test not just my resolve but the limits of the family's perception of who I truly was. The next morning, I woke with a sense of uneasy anticipation. My sister's whispered conversations from the previous night replayed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something bold, something desperate. I had seen the crack in her composure, the momentary panic, and I knew it wasn't over. Her pride wouldn't allow her to surrender quietly, and I had to be ready for whatever she threw my way. I arrived at work, attempting to focus on my tasks, but my mind kept drifting back to the gathering. Every glance, every whispered comment, every subtle reaction from family members played like a loop in my head. I realized that this wasn't just about her or me anymore. It had become a chess game where each move could have consequences far beyond what either of us had imagined. By mid-afternoon, I received a cryptic message: "We need to talk. Now." It was from her. My pulse quickened. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to refuse any direct engagement, knowing that her attempts to manipulate could undo all I had carefully built. But another part of me, the part that thrived on calculated risks, recognized the opportunity. This was my chance to confront her cunning without losing control, to turn her own tactics against her. I agreed to meet, choosing a neutral location, a quiet park where neither of us had an advantage. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, arms crossed, eyes sharp and calculating. She didn't smile. She didn't greet me warmly. Instead, she watched me approach with the intensity of someone sizing up an opponent before a battle. "You think you've won," she said finally, her voice low but laced with venom. "That one evening, a few compliments, and people noticing you, you think it changes anything?" I sat down across from her, keeping my tone calm. I'm not interested in winning, and I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here because you've crossed a line, and it's time to address it, intelligently, rationally, and without unnecessary drama. Her eyes narrowed. Intelligently? You think you're smarter than me? You think everyone will suddenly see you as remarkable? I smiled faintly, a small, confident curve of my lips. Remarkable? Maybe. But not because of what you say or do. Remarkable because I refused to let your words define me. For a moment she was silent, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. I knew she was trying to assess whether I was bluffing, whether there was a crack in my armor she could exploit. But she didn't find one. My calm, measured demeanor, the quiet confidence I projected, was impenetrable. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping even lower. You think you can just erase what happened? All the years, all the moments. I have information, memories, things no one else knows, and I could make sure people see a different side of you. A side that isn't as perfect as you pretend. Her words hit, but not in the way she expected. Instead of fear, a thrill of anticipation coursed through me. This was the challenge I had been waiting for, the ultimate test of my resolve. If you want to try, go ahead, I said evenly. But be careful. You're playing with fire. Every attempt to manipulate, to undermine, only strengthens the plan I've set in motion. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I could see the frustration building, the subtle shaking of her hands. She had underestimated me before, thinking I would crumble under pressure, but now she realized I had anticipated almost everything. Almost, but not everything. And that's when she dropped the bombshell. There's someone else, she said abruptly, her voice almost trembling. Someone who's been watching, listening, someone who could change everything if they reveal what they know. I froze. This was unexpected. Someone else? A hidden observer? Someone who could turn the carefully controlled narrative upside down? My mind raced, evaluating possibilities. Was it a friend? A colleague? Someone within the family? The uncertainty thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. I took a deep breath, forcing calmness. Then let them come, I said finally. Let's see if they understand the truth. Let's see if anyone can manipulate reality more than we've already done ourselves. Her face twisted in anger and disbelief, but she said nothing more. She stood abruptly and walked away, leaving me alone on the bench, staring at the path she had taken. The tension in the air lingered like a storm waiting to break. I knew one thing for certain. This game had escalated far beyond anything I could have imagined. And now, there was an unknown element in play, a factor that could either destroy or elevate everything I had built. That night, I stayed awake, thinking, planning, preparing. Whoever this new player was, I would need to understand their motives, anticipate their moves, and ensure that my transformation and my reclaiming of dignity remained unstoppable. I realized that the real test was only beginning, and that the most astonishing moments were yet to come. And just when I thought the night couldn't hold any more tension, a message appeared on my phone. No words, just a photo. A photo that would change everything. A photo that showed my sister, a familiar figure, and someone I had never expected to see in her shadow. My heart raced. I knew immediately. The game was about to take a turn no one could predict. The photo burned in my mind long after I looked away from the screen. My pulse raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. The image showed my sister standing beside someone I never expected, someone I thought was untouchable in our family circle. Their presence was deliberate, almost intimate, as if they had formed an alliance I hadn't anticipated. My mind raced, trying to piece together who this person was and why they were now entangled in this web of betrayal, pride, and rivalry. The next morning, I couldn't concentrate. Every task at work felt trivial, every conversation distant. All I could think about was the photo, the implications it carried, and how quickly the situation could spiral out of control. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It had grown into a strategic battle with unknown players, hidden motives, and stakes higher than I had ever imagined. By mid-afternoon, curiosity overcame caution. I needed answers. I reached out to one of my closest friends, someone I trusted implicitly, and showed them the photo. Their eyes widened as they studied the image. "Ah, this complicates things," they said carefully. "You need to be very careful. Whoever this is, they have leverage, more than you realize." Leverage. The word echoed ominously in my mind. I realized that my sister hadn't just been reacting out of spite or jealousy, she had been planning, plotting, and now she had backup. My previous strategy, brilliant as it had seemed, might not be enough to counteract this new variable. But I couldn't show panic. I had built my transformation, my newfound strength, on composure, clarity, and deliberate action. Losing control now would undo everything. That evening, I returned home and began retracing my steps over the past few weeks. Every interaction, every casual conversation, every subtle shift in family dynamics suddenly felt like a puzzle I had to solve. Patterns began to emerge, details I had overlooked, whispers that hadn't registered at the time, small gestures that now made perfect sense. It was as if the photo had opened a door to a hidden layer of reality I hadn't fully grasped. Then came a knock at my door. My heart leapt into my throat. I wasn't expecting anyone. Carefully, I peered through the peephole and froze. There they were, the person from the photo. Standing casually on my doorstep, their expression unreadable, eyes sharp and calculating. My first instinct was to retreat, to shut the door and regain control, but curiosity, that relentless force that had propelled me through this journey, won out. I opened the door cautiously. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and challenge. "I think it's time we talk," they said, stepping forward without waiting for an invitation. "There are things you don't know, secrets your sister has been keeping, and things you never realized she's capable of." The words hit like a thunderclap. I had anticipated almost everything: mockery, manipulation, betrayal, but I hadn't anticipated this. This person wasn't just a player, they were a game changer. Their presence implied alliances, hidden strategies, and a level of complexity that threatened to topple all the plans I had carefully constructed. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure. "All right," I said finally. "Talk. But know this, I'm not intimidated, and I won't be manipulated. I've built something strong, something deliberate, and no one's going to undermine it." They studied me for a long moment, their gaze sharp and penetrating, before speaking again. "Good. I can see that. But your sister, she's dangerous in ways you haven't considered. And if you want to survive this, truly survive, you'll need to understand her strategy, her alliances, and most importantly, her weaknesses." As they spoke, a new realization dawned on me. This wasn't just about reclaiming my place in the family or proving my worth. This was a test of intellect, patience, and psychological fortitude. Every move I had made so far had been leading to this moment, but now the stakes had escalated. The board had shifted, the players multiplied, and the game was far from over. And then came the most shocking revelation of all. They leaned in, their voice barely above a whisper, yet every word hit like a hammer. "Your sister isn't acting alone. There's someone else pulling strings behind the scenes, someone you never expected, someone who could change everything you thought you knew about your family, your past, and even yourself." I felt my stomach tighten. Another layer. Another hidden threat. The story I thought I was living had been a mere shadow of the real drama unfolding behind the scenes. The person in front of me smiled faintly, almost smugly, as if they enjoyed the weight of the revelation, the way my mind raced to process the implications. And just like that, I realized the true scope of what I was facing. My sister's betrayal had been only the beginning. The challenges ahead were far more complex, far more dangerous, and far more transformative than I had ever imagined. And in that instant, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next move I made could change everything, either cementing my place as someone unstoppable or unraveling everything I had worked so hard to achieve. The next day would bring the first step toward uncovering this hidden layer, toward confronting alliances I hadn't known existed, and toward a revelation that would shake the family to its core. But I also knew one undeniable truth. No matter what happened next, I was ready. The fire ignited by my sister's words had grown into an inferno, and nothing, not threats, not secrets, not hidden players, could extinguish it. The next morning, I woke with a strange mixture of determination and apprehension. Sleep had eluded me, replaced by visions of whispered conversations, hidden glances, and the haunting photo that had turned my world upside down. I knew that today, everything would begin to shift. Today, I would confront not just my sister, but the hidden forces that had been quietly influencing everything around me. I arrived at the family house under the guise of casualness, masking the tension that churned beneath my calm exterior. Everyone was gathered in the living room, chatting, laughing, oblivious to the storm quietly brewing in the corners of their perceptions. My sister was there, as poised and cold as ever, her eyes flicking to me now and then with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled annoyance. She didn't know I had an unexpected ally now, someone who understood the subtle currents of power and manipulation better than anyone else in the room. And then it happened, the first step in uncovering the hidden layer of the family's dynamics. My ally, the person from the photo, arrived quietly, almost unnoticed. They didn't make a scene. They simply sat in the corner, observing, letting the tension build naturally. Their presence alone caused subtle shifts in the atmosphere. My sister's demeanor changed imperceptibly, a small twitch in her expression, a slight hesitation in her gestures. The invisible web of influence was beginning to unravel, thread by thread, right before her eyes. I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment to start steering events in my favor without revealing my full hand. I engaged in casual conversation, allowing glimpses of my transformation and achievements to surface naturally, letting the family see me not as the sibling they once dismissed, but as someone fully realized and confident. Subtle comments, carefully timed anecdotes, and quiet accomplishments, all designed to showcase strength without arrogance, were my tools. My sister tried to counteract, interjecting, redirecting conversations, attempting to regain control. But her efforts were clumsy, almost desperate. I could see it in the way her eyes darted, the slight tremor in her voice, and the way her carefully constructed persona began to falter under the weight of scrutiny and the quiet influence of my new ally. And then came the revelation that changed everything. My ally leaned in, speaking softly, just loud enough for me to hear. It's time she knows that her secrets aren't as hidden as she believes. There's one truth she has been guarding, one mistake she thought no one would ever uncover. Reveal it carefully, and watch how the tides shift. My heart pounded. The opportunity was here, but so was the risk. This was a delicate moment. One wrong move could backfire, exposing me to scrutiny or worse, giving my sister the upper hand. I nodded subtly, acknowledging the guidance, understanding the stakes fully. This was more than strategy. It was psychological warfare. Every word, every action had to be precise. The family's attention remained scattered as I maneuvered, but I could see the subtle shifts, the micro-expressions that betrayed recognition, curiosity, or doubt. The environment was charged, every interaction a potential turning point. I felt the thrill of control, tempered by the knowledge that any misstep could unravel everything I had painstakingly built. Then, the moment of confrontation arrived. My sister, unaware of the full scope of the plan, attempted to redirect attention, trying to assert dominance through charm, sarcasm, and subtle intimidation. But I was prepared. With a quiet, calm precision, I revealed a carefully selected detail, a truth she had buried, one that illuminated not just her mistakes, but her vulnerability, her desperation, and the extent of her manipulations. The reaction was immediate. Eyes widened, murmurs spread through the room, and for the first time, my sister's smirk faltered completely. She searched for a retort, but the weight of the revelation, combined with the silent scrutiny of the hidden ally, left her momentarily powerless. The balance had shifted, subtly but undeniably. I felt a surge of vindication, tempered by caution. This was only the first layer. There were more secrets, more strategies, more unseen currents to navigate. And my sister, though shaken, was not defeated. Her next move, I knew, would be calculated, clever, and potentially dangerous. As the evening drew to a close, I understood one thing clearly: the true battle had just begun. My transformation, my careful planning, and the revelation of hidden truths had given me an advantage, but the real test was yet to come. Someone else still held the power to upend the delicate balance I had created, someone with insight into my family's deepest secrets and my sister's darkest strategies. And just when I thought the day's events had reached their peak, a final, shocking message arrived, one that hinted at betrayals deeper than I could have imagined, alliances hidden in plain sight, and a revelation that could change everything I thought I knew about my sister, my family, and the very foundation of trust. The message arrived late at night, its tone cryptic, almost taunting. Everything you think you know is only part of the story. Watch closely. I stared at it for several long moments, heart pounding, mind racing. Who had sent it? Was it my sister trying to regain control, or someone else entirely, the hidden player from before? The uncertainty made my pulse quicken. Every possibility carried risk, every scenario demanded careful thought. I spent hours piecing together recent events in my mind. The subtle shifts in family conversations, the seemingly casual remarks, the way my sister had been unusually guarded at the last gathering, it all pointed to something bigger, something I hadn't yet fully grasped. The realization settled over me like a cold wave. My sister wasn't just acting out of jealousy or spite. She was executing a plan, a multi-layered strategy that involved more than just me. And now, there was someone else silently pulling strings, influencing outcomes from the shadows. By morning, I was exhausted yet alert, every sense heightened. I decided to retrace my sister's recent movements, interactions, and alliances. Every social gathering, every phone call, every subtle reference from mutual friends became a piece of a complex puzzle. The hidden player from the photo had warned me that my sister's influence extended further than I realized, and I couldn't afford to underestimate her again. Later that afternoon, I received another hint, a discreet email from an anonymous sender containing a folder of documents, photographs, and messages. Each piece seemed innocuous on its own, but together, they painted a picture of manipulation, betrayal, and calculated moves that went far deeper than I had imagined. My sister had been covering her tracks for years, carefully curating perceptions, hiding alliances, and even orchestrating situations to control outcomes without leaving a trace. I leaned back in my chair, heart racing with both excitement and apprehension. The stakes had shifted dramatically. This was no longer just about reclaiming my dignity or asserting my presence within the family. It was a full-scale battle of intelligence, strategy, and psychological endurance. Every move I had made up to this point, every carefully planned gesture, would be tested against forces I had only begun to understand. That evening, I called my ally, the person who had been observing and guiding me from the shadows. "They're more prepared than I realized," I said, my voice steady but edged with tension. "And there's something else, a hidden layer, a secret we hadn't anticipated. We need to rethink our approach." They listened quietly, then responded with calm authority. "I've anticipated this. Your sister has resources and knowledge you didn't account for, but that's okay. We will adapt. The key is timing. Reveal the right truths at the right moment, and you will maintain control. But you must remain patient. One misstep, one premature revelation, and the entire strategy could collapse." Patience. I reminded myself of that word as I prepared for the next family gathering, a dinner that had initially seemed innocuous but now held immense strategic potential. I spent the day carefully planning, considering every conversation, every movement, every glance. The goal was clear: observe, gather intelligence, and subtly assert control without revealing the full scope of what I knew. The gathering began under the guise of casual normalcy, laughter filling the air, dishes clattering, and small talk masking the underlying tension. My sister, unaware that I had new information, moved through the room with her usual poise, occasionally glancing at me with a calculated smirk. But I noticed subtle signs of unease, the slight hesitation in her smile, the barely perceptible tightness in her posture, the way her eyes flickered when certain topics arose. I played my part carefully, weaving subtle hints and insights into the conversation, allowing others to notice my transformation without directly challenging her authority. Slowly, the balance shifted. Friends and family began leaning in when I spoke, their attention gravitating toward me. My sister's attempts to regain control were measured but increasingly ineffective. And then, a twist. A relative, previously neutral and uninvolved, suddenly shared a story, a detail I hadn't expected, revealing a hidden connection between my sister and someone outside the family. The revelation was subtle but powerful, casting doubt on her previous narratives, and the shift in perception was immediate. I could see her faltering, a flicker of panic crossing her face as the room's dynamics subtly changed in my favor. But just as I began to feel the satisfaction of the shift, another message arrived on my phone. A photograph showing a meeting between my sister and yet another unknown figure, someone with influence I hadn't anticipated. The stakes had risen again. This wasn't just about family rivalry anymore. It was about hidden networks, unseen alliances, and a web of control that stretched further than I had ever imagined. I realized in that instant that patience and strategy would need to guide my next move. The game had expanded, the board had grown, and my sister's machinations were far more complex than I could have ever predicted. But one thing was certain. I would not be intimidated, manipulated, or sidelined. Every move, every revelation, every carefully orchestrated action would bring me closer to ultimate clarity and control. And as the night settled in, I knew that the next steps I took, strategic, deliberate, and precise, would determine not just the outcome of this family battle, but the ultimate truth of who I was and what I was capable of achieving. The morning after the dinner, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The subtle shifts I had observed the night before told me one thing clearly: the game was accelerating, and the hidden alliances my sister had relied upon were beginning to unravel. But I couldn't let my guard down. Not for a second. Every move I made now would have consequences far beyond what I had experienced so far. I began the day by reviewing the evidence my ally and I had gathered: messages, photos, subtle hints, and conversations from the past few weeks. Each piece formed a complex mosaic, revealing connections I hadn't imagined existed. My sister had allies, yes, but not all of them were loyal. There were fractures, vulnerabilities, and secrets waiting to be exposed. I just had to identify the right moment. Timing, as my ally had stressed before, would be everything. By mid-afternoon, I received another message, this time more direct. It was from someone I hadn't anticipated, a family member who had remained neutral until now. Meet me. Alone. There are things you need to know about her plans, before it's too late. I hesitated only for a moment before agreeing. The meeting place was discreet, a small cafe tucked away from the main streets, quiet enough to speak freely. When I arrived, the person was already there, looking nervous yet determined. They slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, photographs, and notes detailing my sister's secret alliances, carefully coordinated manipulations, and attempts to discredit me over the past months. More shocking than that were notes that hinted at her plans for the coming weeks, a chain of events designed to isolate me, undermine my credibility, and, if successful, restore her control over the family's perception entirely. I felt a surge of both dread and excitement. Dread for the complexity of the challenge, excitement for the opportunity to finally confront it with precision. I realized that the family dynamics were far more intricate than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about one sister trying to mock or undermine another. It was a web of strategy, hidden alliances, and calculated power plays. Returning home, I sat in my apartment, laying out every piece of information like a map. Each connection, each interaction, each ally and adversary revealed itself slowly, like a puzzle forming before my eyes. I could see the weak points, the cracks in her armor, the moments where she had overplayed her hand. And I began to formulate my next move, a step that would expose her secrets, shift perceptions irrevocably, and assert my presence in a way no one could ignore. That evening, my sister attempted to maintain her composure, but the subtle tremor in her voice betrayed her. She was aware, on some level, that the tide was turning. During a casual conversation, I noticed her eyes darting whenever someone mentioned my recent achievements or new projects. The confidence she had once wielded so effortlessly was beginning to waver. Then came the moment that changed everything. I orchestrated a seemingly casual family gathering, carefully controlling who was present and what topics were discussed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I guided the conversation toward events and situations my sister had tried to manipulate. I asked questions that seemed innocent but carried the weight of truth, subtly revealing her contradictions and inconsistencies. The effect was immediate. Family members who had once accepted her narrative without question began to hesitate, exchange glances, and reconsider what they had believed. The room's atmosphere shifted subtly but unmistakably. My sister, caught off guard, attempted to recover, but the cracks in her armor were widening with every passing moment. I could feel the exhilaration building inside me. Every carefully calculated step, every subtle revelation, every moment of control I had exerted over the narrative was paying off. But I also knew that the most critical moment, the point of ultimate exposure, was still ahead. One wrong move, one premature revelation, and everything could collapse. As the evening drew on, my ally from the shadows appeared once more, observing from a distance. Their presence was a silent reminder that I wasn't alone in this, that the strategy we had developed together was unfolding precisely as planned. But the unknown factor, the mysterious figure revealed in the earlier photo, was still unaccounted for. Their next move could either strengthen my position or disrupt everything I had worked so hard to achieve. And then, just as the room seemed to settle, a sudden interruption occurred. A phone call, a text, a whispered conversation that hinted at a betrayal even deeper than I had imagined. Someone else, someone I had trusted, had been feeding information to my sister. The realization hit me like a punch. The web of deception extended further than anyone could have predicted, and the final outcome depended on anticipating moves that hadn't even been revealed yet. The night ended with my heart pounding, mind racing, and a single undeniable truth: this battle was far from over. The alliances, betrayals, and secrets that had been hidden in plain sight were coming to light, but the climax, the ultimate revelation that would determine the family's future and my place within it, was still to come. And I knew that the next move, carefully planned and executed, would change everything. The next morning, the weight of the previous night pressed on me. I knew that the subtle manipulations, the hidden alliances, and the secrets that had begun to surface were only the beginning. My sister, though shaken, was not defeated. She was clever, ruthless even, and capable of moves I hadn't yet anticipated. The only way forward was to stay several steps ahead, to anticipate her next strike before it even materialized. I started the day by reviewing all the new information my ally had gathered. Every conversation, every interaction, every hidden communication my sister had orchestrated over the past months was laid bare in meticulous detail. The revelations were staggering. She had been building networks of influence, quietly swaying family opinions, and even forming subtle alliances with friends and colleagues who, until now, had appeared neutral. It was clear that her strategy was no longer about petty jealousy or mocking me. It had become a campaign, calculated, relentless, and dangerously clever. I realized I needed to escalate my approach. Subtlety alone would no longer suffice. I had to confront not only her manipulations but also the hidden players who had aligned themselves with her. The time for patience was nearing its limit. By mid-afternoon, I received an anonymous tip, another message from the mysterious figure whose identity had remained hidden. This time, it contained evidence of direct communications between my sister and someone outside the family, someone with significant influence over our relatives' perceptions. The person had been subtly guiding my sister, feeding her misinformation, and amplifying her control over the family dynamic. My heart raced. The web of deception had grown far more intricate than I had realized. But instead of fear, a strange exhilaration coursed through me. This was the ultimate test, not just of strategy, but of psychological endurance, patience, and intellect. I could no longer afford to react emotionally. Every step had to be precise, deliberate, and calculated to ensure that I not only survived this but emerged victorious. That evening, I arranged a small family meeting, careful to invite only those whose loyalties were uncertain or wavering. My sister, unaware of the full scope of what I had uncovered, entered the room with her usual confidence, smirk firmly in place. But as the conversation progressed, it became evident that cracks were beginning to show. I began subtly revealing truths, asking questions that seemed casual but were designed to expose inconsistencies in her stories. Each revelation caused subtle shifts in the room, raised eyebrows, whispered exchanges, small but telling glances. The control she had wielded so effortlessly for months was slipping. And then came the shock, the betrayal I hadn't fully anticipated. One of the family members, someone I had trusted, subtly sided with her, revealing that they had been feeding her information about my plans. My stomach dropped. I realized that while I had uncovered much, there were still hidden forces I hadn't accounted for, allies she had nurtured quietly in the background. But I refused to let panic take hold. Instead, I adapted, adjusting my strategy on the fly. I revealed another piece of carefully chosen information, one that directly undermined her credibility and subtly exposed the network of alliances she had relied upon. The shift in attention was immediate. Whispers of doubt spread through the room, and the balance of power began tipping in my favor once more. The tension was palpable. My sister, visibly frustrated, tried to regain control with charm and calculated humor, but it was no longer enough. The family members who had once unquestioningly supported her were now hesitant, uncertain, and curious. Their loyalty was faltering, and in that moment, I understood the true power of patience, strategy, and careful planning. Just as the evening seemed to settle, the mysterious figure, whose presence had loomed like a shadow over these events, made their move. A discreet message arrived on my phone, revealing a hidden correspondence between my sister and an external ally, one that neither my family nor I had been aware of. The revelation was explosive, hinting at plans far more ambitious and manipulative than anything I had imagined. I felt a surge of both apprehension and resolve. The stakes had escalated to a point where every action mattered, where every word could shift perceptions, and where even a single misstep could unravel everything. And yet, I knew I had the advantage: foresight, preparation, and the clarity that came from having remained calm and deliberate throughout this escalating drama. As the night ended, I realized that the battle was far from over. Hidden alliances, secret communications, and shocking betrayals had only intensified the challenge. But I also understood something critical. The next move, the next revelation, and the next strategic step would determine not just the outcome of this family conflict, but the ultimate truth of my strength, resilience, and ingenuity. And just as I settled into a quiet moment, a final, unexpected message arrived. A photograph, a text, something so shocking that it promised to unravel the remaining threads of secrecy and deception. The game was about to reach a level none of us had anticipated, and the next chapter would be pivotal. I stared at the photograph that had just appeared on my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't just a casual image, it was a moment frozen in time, one that revealed a betrayal so deep it sent a chill down my spine. My sister was not alone. In the photo, she stood with someone I had never imagined she would align with, someone whose influence over the family had been subtle but undeniable. Their posture, the way they whispered to each other, the almost conspiratorial glance, they were allies in a plan I had never seen coming. The room seemed to shrink around me as I tried to process it all. Everything I had anticipated, every careful step I had taken, now had to be reconsidered. My sister's network of alliances was far more intricate than I had imagined. And yet, amidst the shock and the fear, a spark of determination ignited within me. I had come too far, transformed too much, to let this twist derail me now. I reached out to my ally from the shadows, sending them the photograph immediately. Their response was calm but intense. "This is serious," they said. "She has a hidden partner who has been influencing events behind the scenes. But don't panic. Use this. Turn it into your advantage. Timing is everything." I knew they were right. Panic would only cloud judgment. Every move I had made up to this point had relied on patience, careful observation, and strategic action. Now, more than ever, I had to remain calm, deliberate, and precise. I began to plan my next steps, considering every possibility, every reaction, every hidden layer of the situation. Later that evening, I called a small meeting with key family members whose loyalties were uncertain. My sister, unaware of the full extent of my knowledge, entered with her usual composure, but I could see the tension beneath the surface. Her eyes flicked toward me, trying to gauge my mood, searching for signs of weakness. I began subtly, dropping hints and observations into the conversation. Casual remarks that seemed innocent to anyone else carried a hidden weight. I referenced small inconsistencies, moments that had previously gone unnoticed, and watched as expressions shifted around the room. My sister's smirk faltered. She tried to recover with humor and charm, but it was clear she was unsettled. Then I revealed a carefully chosen piece of evidence, the photograph. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I simply placed it where everyone could see and let it speak for itself. The room fell silent. Whispers erupted as family members studied the image, connecting it to previous events, reassessing what they thought they knew. My sister's face went pale, her confidence crumbling as the subtle web of deception she had relied upon began to unravel before their eyes. But the climax wasn't over. The hidden ally, the person in the photograph, had one final move. Another message appeared, containing proof of a secret plan my sister had been executing for months. This plan had the potential to completely discredit me, to restore her influence and control over the family. The stakes had never been higher. I felt a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and determination. Every action I had taken, every careful step, every moment of patience, led to this point. I realized that the ultimate victory wouldn't come from anger or revenge, it would come from clarity, resilience, and strategic brilliance. I needed to act, but precisely, using the momentum I had carefully built to expose the betrayal and reclaim control without appearing vindictive. The room's atmosphere was electric. Family members exchanged glances, some shocked, some curious, and some quietly impressed. My sister, cornered and exposed, attempted one last gambit, a mix of denial, charm, and subtle threats, but it was too late. The web of deceit had been revealed, her alliances exposed, and her manipulations laid bare. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably, and in that moment, I understood the full scope of what had transpired. Her words, "You're not family anymore," had been meant to wound me, to destabilize me. Instead, they had ignited a transformation. I had evolved, not just in the eyes of my family, but in my own self-perception. I had learned patience, strategy, resilience, and the power of subtle, deliberate action. The night ended with a quiet, profound sense of resolution. My sister, though still present, had lost her grip, and I had emerged not only victorious but transformed. Yet, beneath the surface, I knew the final threads of this story were yet to be tied. The ultimate revelation, the truth about hidden motives, alliances, and the final consequences, was still waiting to unfold. And just when I thought I had reached the peak of tension, another message appeared on my phone, one so unexpected that it promised to redefine everything once again. The final confrontation, the one that would seal the story's ultimate twist, was imminent. The air was thick with silence as the final moments of confrontation settled over the room. I could feel the weight of every emotion, every unspoken thought, every subtle glance that had built up over months of manipulation, jealousy, and hidden agendas. My sister sat across from me, a shadow of the confident, mocking figure she had once been. Her eyes flickered with disbelief, frustration, and a twinge of reluctant respect, though she would never openly admit it. The game had shifted entirely, and I was now the one who held the unseen power, the one who had turned every insult, every whispered taunt, and every attempt to belittle me into a force that elevated me beyond expectation. I took a deep breath, allowing the calmness to flow through me, a stark contrast to the chaos and tension that had defined the past weeks. The room, filled with family members, witnesses, and even those who had once been neutral, hung on every small movement, every subtle expression. In that moment, I realized that the power of transformation isn't loud. It isn't about shouting, about confrontation or vengeance. It's about quiet strength, calculated action, and a relentless belief in oneself. Every action I had taken had been a testament to patience, intelligence, and strategy, and now the results were undeniable. The journey to this point had been filled with challenges, moments of doubt, and the sting of betrayal. When my sister had spoken those words, words meant to wound me, to erase me from our shared history, she had no idea what she had truly sparked. "You're not family anymore." Those words, intended as a weapon, became the catalyst for an internal awakening. Each insult she had thrown, each sarcastic remark, had fed the fire of my determination. The mockery that was supposed to diminish me instead fueled a transformation that no manipulation, no secret alliance, and no hidden strategy could undo. I looked around the room and noticed the subtle shifts in perception. Family members who had once doubted me, who had questioned my presence and worth, now saw me in a new light. Their eyes held recognition, curiosity, and a quiet awe. The whispers, the side glances, the subtle nods, they were all acknowledgments of the journey I had undertaken, the resilience I had displayed, and the strategic brilliance that had allowed me to emerge victorious. The balance of power had changed, not through anger or revenge, but through clarity, patience, and unwavering self-belief. And then, the truth became even more profound. This story, this battle that had consumed months of emotions and energy, was about more than family dynamics, mockery, or betrayal. It was about the human spirit, about the ability to rise above humiliation, doubt, and adversity. It was about understanding that strength is not defined by the power to control others, but by the ability to control oneself, to remain poised in the face of chaos, and to transform every challenge into an opportunity for growth. My sister, for all her cunning and strategy, had underestimated me. She had not seen the depth of resilience I possessed, the meticulous patience I had cultivated, or the sharpness of insight that allowed me to navigate every hidden move and every whispered plan. And though she still held a presence in the room, the invisible chains of influence she had relied upon had been broken, replaced by a newfound respect, even if unspoken. The story of mockery had ended, but the story of triumph and transformation had reached its magnificent peak. The mysterious ally, whose guidance and vigilance had been instrumental throughout this journey, finally stepped forward, revealing their presence not as a shadow but as a witness to the power of deliberate, strategic action. Their calm demeanor, their quiet strength, and their unwavering loyalty had ensured that I was never alone in this battle, even when it felt like the odds were stacked against me. They had been the unseen hand, the guiding force that allowed me to convert mockery into power, whispers into wisdom, and betrayal into triumph. As the final pieces of the puzzle settled into place, I reflected on the lessons embedded within this experience. True power, I realized, is not about dominance or control. It is about self-awareness, resilience, and the courage to act with precision when the moment demands it. Every insult had been a lesson, every challenge an opportunity, and every hidden strategy a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. What had started as a moment of humiliation had evolved into a demonstration of brilliance and dignity that no one could ignore. And yet, there was something more profound than mere victory. The journey had revealed the transformative nature of adversity. It had shown that those who attempt to diminish you, mock you, or erase you from their world inadvertently provide the fuel to rise higher than you ever imagined. Every word meant to wound became a stepping stone. Every sneer and every act of betrayal became a mirror, reflecting not weakness, but the strength that had always been present, waiting to emerge. The room, once tense with the weight of hidden agendas and subtle manipulations, now held a sense of awe and quiet reverence. Even my sister, despite the collapse of her carefully constructed plan, carried a look of grudging acknowledgment. She had tried to define my worth through mockery and deception, but I had reclaimed it not through confrontation, but through the art of patience, strategy, and unwavering self-confidence. As I prepared to leave, the sense of liberation was overwhelming. The chains of judgment, doubt, and belittlement had been broken. I had proven not just to my family, but to myself, that resilience, intelligence, and calm perseverance are forces more powerful than ridicule, manipulation, or even hidden conspiracies. Every step, every action, every carefully chosen strategy had led to this moment of undeniable triumph. The story's ending was magnificent not because it silenced mockery, but because it illuminated the path of transformation. It reminded everyone present, and those who would hear this story, that true strength is cultivated quietly, nurtured patiently, and revealed deliberately. It is forged in the fire of adversity, sharpened by challenges, and perfected through unwavering self-belief. The message on my phone glowed ominously in the dark room. I hesitated for only a moment before opening it. Inside was a video, a recording of a private conversation between my sister and the mysterious figure whose identity had remained hidden for so long. Their tone was calm, calculated, and shockingly cold. They discussed plans I hadn't even anticipated, strategies meant to isolate me completely, and moments intended to make me question not just my worth, but my very place in the family. For a heartbeat, I felt a twinge of fear, but it was quickly replaced by clarity. Every step I had taken, every subtle action, every patient strategy, had prepared me for this. I wasn't the same person my sister had mocked. I was stronger, smarter, and far more capable of turning the tables than she could have imagined. I decided it was time for the final confrontation. The next family gathering was arranged, seemingly casual, but carefully orchestrated. I entered the room with calm confidence, my posture relaxed, my demeanor poised. Everyone noticed immediately. There was an aura of authority around me now, one that demanded respect without a word. My sister's eyes flickered to mine, her confidence faltering ever so slightly. I let the evening progress, observing, listening, and gathering subtle reactions. Then, with deliberate calm, I revealed the video. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I played it for the key family members first, letting the evidence speak for itself. The room fell silent as they absorbed the truth. My sister's plans, her alliances, her manipulations, all laid bare. The look on her face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and rising panic. She had underestimated me at every turn, never imagining that I had the foresight, patience, and strategy to uncover her hidden moves. The whispers spread, questions formed, and suddenly, the control she had wielded for so long slipped through her fingers. But the most crucial moment was yet to come. I stood calmly, addressing the room with quiet authority. I spoke of transformation, resilience, and integrity, how I had refused to let mockery define me, how I had remained patient and deliberate, and how true strength wasn't measured by manipulation or deceit, but by clarity and perseverance. My words resonated. Family members nodded, exchanged glances, and gradually, the realization dawned. The person who had once seemed powerless, the one my sister had mocked, had become the one who commanded respect, admiration, and trust. My sister, though present, had lost the subtle war she had been waging for years. Then came the ultimate revelation. My mysterious ally stepped forward, revealing their identity, a relative, quiet, observant, and deeply loyal, who had been monitoring the manipulations and assisting me without seeking recognition. Their testimony confirmed everything: my sister's alliances, her plans, and the lengths she had gone to in order to regain control. The room was stunned. My sister, finally cornered, could only sit silently, her attempts at charm and manipulation rendered useless. Every strategy she had employed, every whisper and subtle move, had been countered by patience, insight, and deliberate action. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. In that moment, I understood the true meaning of strength. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't mockery, and it wasn't manipulation. It was clarity, resilience, strategy, and above all, the refusal to let others define your worth. My sister's words, "You're not family anymore," had been meant to wound me, but instead, they had ignited a transformation that no mockery could undo. The evening ended with quiet resolution. Relationships were redefined, perceptions had shifted, and I had emerged not just victorious, but transformed. My sister's smirk was gone, replaced by a grudging acknowledgement, silent, yet unmistakable. The family now saw me not as the sibling they once dismissed, but as someone formidable, respected, and undeniably present. As I left the gathering, a calm sense of triumph washed over me. The battles, the betrayals, and the secrets had tested me in ways I could never have anticipated. But I had emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakable. And deep down, I knew that the fire my sister had sparked, the insult, the mockery, the doubt, had ultimately forged a version of me that no one could ever dismiss again. The final lesson was clear. When faced with mockery, betrayal, and hidden enemies, strength doesn't come from retaliation. It comes from transformation, patience, strategy, and unwavering self-belief. And in the end, those who tried to diminish me had only illuminated the power I had carried all along. The chapter closed, but the story of resilience, growth, and quiet triumph would remain, a testament to the fact that even in the face of mockery, even when told you are not family anymore, your strength and dignity can rewrite the narrative entirely. And as I stepped out of the room, leaving behind the echoes of tension, disbelief, and realization, I knew that the legacy of this journey would endure. It would be remembered not as a tale of mockery, betrayal, or family conflict, but as a story of transformation, empowerment, and resilience. Every listener, every viewer who witnesses this journey will understand that even when others attempt to define your worth, it is your courage, patience, and deliberate action that ultimately shape your destiny. The final truth resonated within me, powerful and unshakable. Mockery may sting, betrayal may hurt, and hidden forces may conspire against you, but they can never define you. The fire they ignite within you can either consume you or transform you into something magnificent. I chose transformation. I chose clarity. I chose resilience. And in doing so, I discovered a power that no insult, no betrayal, and no hidden alliance could ever take away. The night ended with a quiet, profound sense of victory. Not loud, not boastful, but deeply satisfying. The story had reached its conclusion, every secret revealed, every alliance exposed, and every lesson learned. And yet, the echo of its truth remained, an enduring reminder that strength, dignity, and brilliance are forged in the crucible of adversity, and that even when the world tries to tell you that you are not family anymore, your own power can redefine everything.